There are 7 new head coaches in the NFL this fall. And look, I want to start this topic with some honesty because I am still developing my opinions on these guys. And this is a topic I will revisit, throughout the year and then after the year as well. I'm going to revisit this topic often. But I do want to share my kind of thoughts and expectations before the year does begin as kind of a baseline for these 7 young, not even young, 7 new NFL head coaches, because some of them, David Culley's in his 60s. Now, these guys, for the most part, other than, Dan Campbell has been a head coach briefly in Miami as an interim head coach, but these guys, for the most part, have not coached a game in the NFL yet. And so, obviously, as the year goes on, my opinions will change and evolve based on what we see and what we learn from these 7 new head coaches. But some of them, I even try to be very clear. Like, I don't know how they're going to do, and I'm going to wait to cast judgment until we see what they have and until I learn more about them. But first of all, I want to start with the Jets' new head coach, Robert Saleh. I have friends who've met him. My friends that have met him speak very, very highly of Robert Saleh. And I would say, go watch the 49ers defense last year at the end of the year. He was the 49ers defensive coordinator last year. And even though the team had a bad record and the season was lost, their defense fought really, really hard. And they were very sharp and played well. And to me, that's the mark of a good defensive coordinator who can bring the best out of his players. And to have guys in a season that's lost fighting so hard, to me, says a lot about Robert Saleh. Now, the Jets are historically a dysfunctional organization. Ownership problems and problems really from top to bottom, just toxic, awful stuff. But I got to say, right now, the current, for lack of a better term, like cast or ensemble of Jets people in the front office, whether it's the GM Joe Douglas, whether you have the head coach Robert Saleh, I really like. I like their offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach. I love the Jets rookie quarterback, Zach Wilson. So I like where things are going for the Jets. I think they're headed in a good direction. They're clearly rebuilding. And I do not think they're going to win a lot of games this year. But that's okay. This year is about growth and development for the New York Jets. And I got to say, I feel good about Robert Saleh. I think long-term he's going to succeed, even if this year is a rougher year. But again, the Jets' future is what I feel good about. And that, to me, is what matters. So I like Robert Saleh. Okay, coach number 2, Urban Meyer. He's the Jaguars' new head coach. And I got to say, I have a lot of respect for the career he had as a college football coach. He went, 187-32, won 3 national titles between Florida and Ohio State. But here's the problem. We're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. This is not college football. So Urban Meyer's got a really hard task of learning how to coach in the NFL. And we saw once Nick Saban, who many people believe is the best coach ever to coach in college football. Some people argue other people. That's fine. I don't really care about that debate. But Nick Saban has won 6 national titles as a college football head coach. He failed as a head coach of the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. So college and the NFL are not the same. And I am very skeptical of Urban Meyer, not just because he's never coached in the NFL before, but because he keeps making rookie mistakes. You may not know, he's already being investigated by the NFLPA for some of the stuff he's been doing in Jacksonville. Another mistake he made, in my opinion, was during training camp, he split reps between Trevor Lawrence and Gardner Minshew 50-50. And then he traded away then he traded away Gardner Minshew. And you're like, why'd you take away these valuable reps from your starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, to give them to Gardner Minshew, a guy you didn't even keep? And to me, that felt like a bad judgment and a misstep there. Players already apparently are unhappy with what Urban Meyer's doing in Jacksonville. And I got to say, it is true. There are a number of talented players in Jacksonville. Guys, I look around, I'm like, hey, that's a good player. That's a good player. There's a lot of talent there. But for Urban Meyer to be able to win in the NFL, he needs to be able to connect with NFL players and then ultimately develop their young talent in Jacksonville. And NFL players are very, very different from college athletes. They're not taking classes. They're older. They have kids. They have families. They're getting paid. And you often hear college coaches talk about developing young men, and they give this kind of long spiel basically for parents about how they're going to help their kids and develop them and get them ready for the real world. And NFL players don't want that crap. And I already saw an article where Urban Meyer was talking about how He doesn't like how little time he spends with the players. In college, you spend more time with your players. In the NFL, you're spending more time in film rooms and meetings, preparing for stuff. And Bill Belichick is not trying to make you into a good person, right? You might do that as a byproduct of working with Bill, right? Bill has good philosophies that you might learn work ethic, you might learn all kinds of stuff. But that's not Bill Belichick's priority. He's not trying to make you into a better person. And the way Urban Meyer relates to his players is going to be very, very key. He's got to do it in a way that appeals to NFL players rather than college football players. And it's super important how he does that. And then the way him and his staff can develop their young talent, that is crucial to how well he does in Jacksonville. They've got good young players there, but they got to get better, and they got to develop into really high-quality NFL players, not just some young guys with some talent. Now, Dan Campbell is the Detroit Lions' new head coach. He made waves during his first ever press conference in the NFL. If you don't know, just Google Dan Campbell kneecaps. You'll find it on Google. You'll have a fun time there. Honestly, I didn't mind the quote. It's old news now, in my opinion. I think worst case, people were way too hard on it. I think here's what I mean when I say worst case. Worst case is Dan Campbell got too passionate about football during a press conference, and I don't know that that's not exactly what the Lions need. Maybe the Lions do need some passion and some heart behind their coaching staff. And especially after what they just went through with Matt Patricia, who was very cold and had this demeanor people didn't like. And so I'm on the fence about Dan Campbell. Is he going to be a good head coach? I'm not sure, but the way that Dan Campbell talks, his passion, the way he talks about his players, it's compelling. I love Dan Campbell as a person, and I'm definitely rooting for him. And I got to add, I really like what he's done. Part of what he did was a couple things here. Part of why I like Dan Campbell is that he played for 10 years in the NFL as a tight end, so he's got a player's mentality. He relates very well to his players. He also knows the NFL. He was once a head coach briefly in Miami. He did a pretty solid job as the interim head coach in Miami. They didn't keep him, but he went 5-7, I believe. Well, the players liked him. People wanted him to be kept in Miami. Unfortunately, he did not get hired in Miami. But I don't know, man. I really like what Dan Campbell's doing. I think his knowledge of the NFL is going to help him. He's certainly not making the rookie mistakes that Urban Meyer's making. And then I also love the offensive coordinator he hired, Anthony Lynn. He was the Chargers head coach last year. He did not do good enough, obviously, to keep his job in L.A. He could not win big games. They could not capitalize on a lot of the talent they had. So Anthony Lynn may not be a very good head coach, but he is a good offensive coordinator. I like Anthony Lynn. I think he's got some good ideas and good stuff going on. Now, Dan Campbell is going to have some challenges where first he's going to have to overcome the culture in Detroit. The culture there is a mess. It's an organization that is really, really problematic, had bad ownership, had all kinds of problems. That's hard to change, the culture of your organization. Now, the second problem Dan Campbell's going to face is that his quarterback is Jared Goff. They traded for Jared Goff from the Rams. Remember, they traded Matthew Stafford to the LA Rams. They got Jared Goff in return and a couple first-round picks. There's a reason why Jared Goff was traded with multiple first-round picks to get rid of him. And Jared Goff has to prove himself. I am not sure that Jared Goff is going to be the Lions' long-term quarterback. Now, if he's bad, obviously that's going to hurt their season this year. However, the good news is that the Lions have multiple first-round picks in the next couple NFL drafts. And so if Goff is terrible, they can find his replacement either by drafting the guy straight up with a bad pick, or maybe even packaging a couple first-round picks together to move up in the draft and get their replacement. So I think where the Lions are right now, they got a coach who is passionate, who I like, who's a player's coach, and I think is going to get people to fight hard for him. Is he good at being a head coach? I don't really know, but I like him. He's got a good offensive coordinator. He's got a good staff I think he's put together in Detroit. And even if Jared Goff doesn't work out in Detroit, they'll be okay because they've got draft picks they can use to eventually replace him down the road. All right, Brandon Staley is the new LA Chargers head coach. He does replace Anthony Lynn, the guy I just mentioned. I am not going to pretend that I know a ton about this guy. I don't. I really don't. And I'm excited to see how he does and judge from there. Last year, he was the Rams defensive coordinator. He's only 38 years old. He's actually 6 years younger than Tom Brady. But he did a very, very good job as the Rams defensive coordinator. They had one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the entire NFL. And in LA with the Chargers, the other team across town, he's got a lot of talent, man, including, by the way, their young quarterback, Justin Herbert. So I'm hopeful about Brandon Staley. I have nothing bad to say about the guy. I also don't have much good to say about the guy. I know he's done a good job as a coordinator in the past. I think it's likely he's going to do a great job in LA based on the way he talks and what he said, but he seems smart. He's highly regarded, and I'm going to wait till I get more information on Brandon Staley to really give a lot of information and say a lot of opinions, because just I'm learning and figuring out more about this guy every day. Now, Arthur Smith is the new Atlanta Falcons head coach. Last year, he was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee, and I felt like he needed to evolve their passing game. And it's kind of weird to see a guy who I thought left something on the table get hired as a head coach. But I don't know. I was waiting and waiting for that evolution of their passing game, taking a next step forward, and it never did happen. So that was not a great first impression with Arthur Smith. I wasn't like, oh, wow, I love this guy. Oh, now we got hired. Awesome. I was kind of like, weird. So I'm very lukewarm on Arthur Smith. He also has some problems on their roster in Atlanta, but I'm trying to have an open mind, and we'll see how he does. But I'm not all in on this hire. I don't love him. His team is bad. He's an okay coach, and we'll see what happens, but I'm willing to have my mind changed as things go on. Now, the Eagles hired a new head coach, Nick Sirianni. He used to be the Colts offensive coordinator. Look, I kind of hate talking about this, and I know that Eagles fans especially do not like when I talk about this. His first ever press conference in the NFL as a head coach was terrible, and it was a really, really bad first impression. Obviously, it seemed like he was very nervous. He was sweating. He was rambling and just going on and on about this. It was like, what are you talking about, dude? And since that first impression, he's actually gotten better in press conferences. Go watch him today. He's got a much different demeanor than he did in that first ever press conference. And so I'm going to wait and see how his team does before I judge him. By week 8, 9, or 10, we'll have a really way better idea how good of a coach Nick Sirianni is going to be. So I don't love the guy, but I'm trying to have an open mind, and I'm going to wait to save my judgment until we see how he does. He might crash and burn, but he might surprise me and be amazing. And now the Eagles organization is very, very tough. It does not seem like Nick Sirianni has much power there. The team has some flaws. I do love two of their quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew and Jalen Hurts. The starting quarterback there is Jalen. But again, I'll just wait and see. It does seem like he has recovered from his really bad first impression. And look, we'll see. He seems like he's doing all right. I have an open mind, and we'll see what happens with Nick Sirianni this year in Philadelphia. Now, David Culley, the final and 7th hire new head coach in the NFL. David Culley is a guy who, oh man, he's the Texans' new head coach. I just feel bad for him. And Houston's a mess top to bottom. They're just a really, really problematic football team. They're the worst in the NFL. In fact, they're so bad that no one wanted the job. Between ownership problems and the quarterback situation, Deshaun Watson, the legal battle there, nobody wanted this job. I mean, the Houston Texans could not find anyone to be their head coach. And in fact, they had to go to David Culley, a guy who, his name was not even mentioned in all the conversations about, every other team that had a head coaching job open. I never heard David Culley's name one time. And this is my job. I follow this very, very closely. So that was kind of the first sign that, this guy might not be the best head coach we've ever seen. He was previously the Ravens passing game coordinator, which is weird to hire a guy, the passing game coordinator for a team that is known for how well they run the football. And so I feel bad. This guy has no shot. Unfortunately, it's not fair. It's not his fault. He's going to a terrible organization. He probably shouldn't have been hired to begin with, but Houston's organization is a real problem here. Bad ownership, a quarterback situation that is a terrible mess, just problem after problem after problem. And so if and when David Culley does fail in Houston, I don't even blame the guy. I just think he's in an impossible situation, in over his head, and I feel bad for the guy. And I don't wish anything bad against him. My prediction is it's not going to go well in Houston, and that feels very, very obvious.